Hello again, I am Danny Graham, and welcome to another episode of The Sports Station, brought to you by New York Sports Hub, where New York sports comes alive. Today, I welcome a very special guest to the show, someone that is considered one of the greatest players to ever put on a New York Giants uniform. He served as the team's defensive lineman from 1983 to 1992, and was just one of the many stars for the Giants during that decade that saw New York capture 2 Super Bowl titles. He was and still is considered a fan favorite in the Giants community, and we are privileged enough to welcome him to our show today. And we are, of course, talking about Leonard Marshall. Leonard, welcome to the show, and thank you for your time today.
Hey, thank you so much, Daniel.
Hey, thank you for coming on again. So, we're going to be talking about Leonard's career in the NFL, his accomplishments, disappointments, highs and lows in that area, but we're also going to talk to him today about what he does today, which includes being a teacher, doing motivational speaking, and most importantly, his work with bringing awareness to the issue of long-term injuries to athletes pertaining to concussions and head trauma. But I do want to start with your NFL career, Leonard, because that's what everybody knows you for. But this upcoming season, the 2015 season, the Giants are going to be celebrating the 25th anniversary of that 1990 New York Giants championship season. So I'll just start off simple. Can you believe it's been 25 years?
Well, I tell you, I can't believe it's 25 years already.
Yeah.
And, from seeing guys over the years from time to time, most of the guys seem to have endured it pretty well. During the course of that 25-year period, I think we only lost one player, but I'm not quite certain if he was on that roster or not. And that was Mr. Stacy Robinson.
Uh-huh.
But I believe that, over the time, I'm honestly happy to say that most of those guys are doing well. One of the guys who had some sort of a setback a few years ago just so happened to be back acclimated to life and enjoying life, and that's Mr. Mark Ingram.
Oh, yeah,
who
yeah.
Who at one time was incarcerated and is now out now and living a fruitful and abundant life.
And, it's interesting you bring up Mark Ingram, or as you guys called him, Ingy, because his son was drafted a couple years back by the Saints, and he wasn't there because he was incarcerated, and his son was even shedding tears on behalf of, in honor of his father. So it's good to know that he is back out in the public, and he's doing well from, I guess, where we stand. So I guess it's pretty good.
Yes, and I was excited and ecstatic to hear that from a former teammate, Stephen Baker, who's also a member of that team.
Mm-hmm.
And he's sharing with me that Mr. Ingram was out and out of incarceration and back in the general population and making strides with his life. That makes me extremely happy.
Yeah, it makes me happy too. And have the Giants reached out to you yet about any special plans that they have this year to celebrate the 25th anniversary?
Yes, they have. I just recently got a phone call from Joanne Lamech,
mm-hmm.
who happens to run the alumni, who runs the alumni benefits department in conjunction with the New York Giants. And Ms. Lamech shared with me that they're going to honor the 1990 team and bring guys into the area starting September 18th.
Okay.
And there's some sort of a cocktail party on the 18th. There's the same type of event and a breakfast on the 19th. There's a cruise around Manhattan that's scheduled on the 19th.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sunday, game day, there's going to be something in the Legacy Club for the players on the 20th, and they're going to honor the guys on the field the day of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the 21st. Yes, the 21st, they're going to honor the guys on the field, and there'll be some other activities going on that are scheduled during the course of that weekend. But all the festivities begin on the 18th, which is a Friday, and they end on the 20th. She got the dates wrong. They end on the 20th, which is a Sunday.
Okay, because I remember 4 years ago, the 2011 Giants season, when they were celebrating the 25th anniversary of the 1986 team. I remember going to a Monday Night Football game, and that's when the 1986 team, which includes you obviously, you guys were honored, and I was surprised of the full list of characters that were on display there. Bill Parcells, you, Mark Bavaro, and like all those Giants greats. So it's good to know that they're doing the same thing now that they did for you 4 years ago.
Yes. I mean, I was very honored to see the turnout and participation of the '86 team being so well coordinated and well organized, and that the guys actually really stepped up to the plate to make that event.
Mm-hmm.
Something special and something for us to remember.
Absolutely. And so now, you were fortunate enough to be part of both the 1986 and the 1990 team, and you were actually a big part on both of those teams. So many people consider the 86 team as one of the greatest Super Bowl teams ever, and they consider the 90 team as probably one of the grittiest Super Bowl teams ever. So from where you stand, would you agree with those statements, or would you classify either of them differently?
Oh, no doubt. I think the '86 team was one of the greatest teams in the history of pro football. I think the cast of characters that we had on that team transcended. It definitely transcended 2 decades of players. We had players from the '70s, and we had players from the '80s that actually merged talent, merged ideals, and emerged physical style of play. We had 2 elder statesmen of players, actually 3. Now that I think about it, we had a Phil Simms from 1979 as a quarterback. Mm-hmm. We had George Martin and Harry Carson, who were players from the '70s and from the Giants' origination of moving into the Meadowlands to play football. Those guys got a chance to see, the evolution of the '86 team, in full effect.
Right.
I mean, most of the players that were on the '86 team were drafted from 1981 through 1986. In '86, we drafted 5 guys between rounds 1 through 6 that actually made our roster and helped improve our roster. And of those players, 4 of them were integral players in our run for championship in that particular season.
Mm-hmm. And
go ahead. It was quite interesting.
It was interesting.
No, it was quite interesting to see.
Yeah. And because when I think of both teams, the '86 and the '90 team, when I look at the '86 team, I see a team that was peaking as far as talent was concerned. With, like you said, the draft classes from '81 to '86. That's you. That's Lawrence Taylor. That's Mark Bavaro. I can think of other people here, but not at the top of my head. But you guys were heading into the '86 season in peak form, and it was going to be a disappointment of a season if you guys didn't win the Super Bowl because you had so much talent peaking at just the right time. And then when you see the '90 team, you kind of see a team that they have pretty much the same core of talent from the '86 team, except you guys are all 4 years progressed, and it was more or less just, one final push, one strong final push as a team effort to go win that championship. And, of course, everyone says, against all odds, that 1990 team. Phil Simms goes down, Jeff Hostetler steps in, your main running back heading into the postseason was a 33-year-old running back in O.J. Anderson. So, yeah, there were a lot of reasons for you guys to not make an honest run, but the 90 team, again, defied all odds, and that's kind of been the Giants' mantra since then.
Yeah, and that it's funny you say that because we use that as our motivation. I mean, nobody expected us to win 10 games going up to and leading up to the Monday night game against the San Francisco 49ers in 1990. No one anticipated us doing that. In '86, everybody knew how good we were.
Right.
And that was because we drafted well. We brought players along those players we brought along, they improved. You know, we're talking about a young Carl Banks, a young Gary Reason, a young Lionel Manuel.
There you go. Those are the guys I forgot.
Yeah, you know, a young Joe Morris as a running back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and a few other guys who had finally come along, you know, including myself, and were being accountable within our system. And the fact that, you know, they hired, you know, my college strength coach, who really had an impact on the organization, and Johnny Parker, to come in and teach guys how to get in shape, how to eat right, you know, how to train right, you know, how to train smart, and how to be accountable to one another,
right?
And build that camaraderie that you need as a football team to really be productive and to click on the same cylinder at the same time. It was crucial. You know, and the 90 team got that. And they got that because it had a core nucleus of guys from 86 that was returning for an opportunity to now win another championship.
Mm. And so if you were to choose, which championship team were you more proud of?
Wow, well, you know, nothing will never take place of 1986 because, you know, again, you know, that team was the closest of a team that I've ever seen a team get in terms of guys being accountable and held accountable for one another, guys rooting and pulling for one another the way we did in practice, guys rooting and pulling for one another in games. You know, when we sat down, we watched film collectively together as a unit. We just did everything together. You know, we went to dinner together. We just did a lot of things together, and I you know, as tough as it may be, I give a lot of credit to Parcells, Belichick, you know, guys like Harry Carson and George Martin for the leadership exemplified that season, and pulling young guys together for one common goal, and that's to trust one another. Football is a game of trust. You know, players have to trust coaches, coaches have to trust players. You know, players are put in positions to play for coaches, and coaches have to entrust that player can perform the task, and if he can't perform the task, they got to find somebody else to do it. And I think when you look at the 86 team on the field playing the game, you can see a lot of trust and a lot of love in terms of what we did.
Okay.
Versus what happened in 1990. I mean, versus in 1990, we knew one another and we were close to one another, and you know, a bunch of these guys that played together for a while, and it was great. But you know, ask me if we felt confident enough that we could go out, beat San Francisco in their own place, 15-13. You know, I knocked out their quarterback in that championship run, and then we turn around and we play. You know, we play a Buffalo Bills team that has scored 83 points in 2 weeks against two really good football teams, and then we hold them to 19 points in the Super Bowl. We would have told you you're crazy. You know, but it happened.
Yeah.
It happened, and it happened because of trust and love and the compassion for the game.
You know, I think you feel so strongly about that 1990 team that you actually, in fact, wrote a book about that team, right?
That's correct.
And
that's correct. And I wrote about that because I felt that team was a team that was forgotten, and that you know, the fans didn't forget it, but you know, for the most part, I didn't want the players to forget it, and I want the fans to be reminded.
Sure.
That was a really good football team, you know, that was quarterbacked by Phil Simms for 10 games, and a championship run by Jeff Hostetler that wouldn't have happened unless we loved and trust one another and gave everything we had for that game. I wanted people to remember that, and I wanted them to remember some of the characters in that game, and where are they now?
Right. And that book is called When the Cheering Stops, which you co-wrote with sports writer William Bendinson, and even Bill Parcells was kind enough to write a foreword for you. So I guess that's one of those things you just clicked on was the fact that you had a trust in the coach and mostly a mutual trust with Bill Parcells. And, a lot of people look at the Big Tuner and they say, what a great coach, and there's not many like him. And you know what? As sad as that may seem, it's the God honest truth. I think you can agree with that.
Oh, yes, it is. I mean, I think from a player perspective, we wouldn't have wanted a different coach than Bill.
Right.
Because we knew what kind of guy he was. We knew he was smart as hell. We knew that he surrounded himself with excellent talent in terms of additional field general and the general commanders that he had. These guys really did a great job in terms of preparing the guys to play the game and developing the type of camaraderie amongst the units that were deployed to play the game that we needed. I mean,
right.
we needed to have that type of leadership, and it worked out. I mean, it worked out. I mean, and that's why whenever I see these guys, I tell them, man, I'm so glad to see you and see that you're doing well and you're prosperous in your life after the sport because of what you gave me while you were in the sport.
Right. And touching on that 1990 season, I just found this out yesterday when I was doing my research for this. But you were actually involved in a holdout leading up to that 1990 season. So a lot of people think of holdouts and they think of like Des Bryant this past off season. But in 1990, free agency wasn't what it was today, and so there's all that leading up to it. I know you and Lawrence Taylor were in a 1990 holdout leading up to the season. So what was that about, like, from your end? Could you give us some insight on that?
Well, I'll tell you, from Lawrence and I's perspective, the main thing with me was I just wanted to be compensated and paid to play the game on the level that Lawrence was.
Okay.
I knew, and they knew, what I brought to the team on a weekly basis. They knew that, not only as a run stopper, but as a pass rusher, that, they needed a talent like mine to win.
Right.
And I just wanted to be compensated for what I did at the same level that Lawrence was.
Okay.
For the longest, I had to take a back seat to getting paid my money to perform like the linebackers were paid in our defense. And I just didn't think it was fair
Right.
that I come in and I work as hard as I work in the off season and I work that hard in training camp to help my team win, prepare my team to win, and execute and help my team win, and not be, awarded for it. I just didn't think it was right.
Okay.
And fortunately, it worked out that once Lawrence and I returned to the team, that we were able to, get ourselves in football shape fairly quickly, and become an impact player in our defense, and help our defense make that 10-game run that we made from the start of the season through mid-November.
Okay, and so now when people think of holdouts, now when fans hear about these holdout things, I don't think a lot of fans understand that when it comes to professional sports, when you're a player, when you're a coach, when you're an official or an executive, that in the world of pro sports, it's a business first and a game second. And a lot of fans are like, people would say to you, "Oh, Leonard, what are you doing thinking about money like that? Get your what on the field and get ready for this season." But I think like your stance is probably justifiable. It's fair because you're thinking of things on a business perspective. Hey, why am I training as hard as Lawrence Taylor and this linebacking core, and they're getting paid more than I am, and they're doing the same amount of work as I am?
Yes, and I agree with you. I think that for the most part, fans are, they're so misinformed about the entire business portion of professional football and that's back in that era. I think
Right.
Now the fan is a lot more educated now versus the way it was before. I think before, that attitude existed that you just talked about. But I think now, the fan now understands, the player a lot better. And then what could happen to that player as a result of, because of all the things you've heard over the last 3 to 5 years about player injuries, concussion, head trauma, and everything else associated with players in the game.
Right. And so now I'm thinking about this now from like a team perspective. Was Bill Parcells at any point in these holdout conversations, was he sort of a corporate guy, or did he just say, Leonard, you deserve to be compensated, whatever you feel is right, take this up with George Young, I'm going to practice with my team on the field, and then once you two get this settled, you're welcome to come back anytime. Was that sort of the atmosphere, or was it a little bit different?
No, it's a lot different.
Yeah.
For the most part, he took it personal. He took it personal when a player held out. He felt like, especially when a guy had a contract, and he didn't understand that at that time, we didn't have any options. Once you signed the contract, you signed the contract.
Right.
You couldn't go play for somebody else. No one could bid for your talent. It was almost like, modern day slavery. I mean, God, they get you, they own you. They own your rights. You can't go anywhere. You can't do anything about it. You had no leverage. No leverage. And I think that's what the guys are fighting for. And you see now what has happened as a result of guys now obtaining leverage.
Right.
Guys have a chance, move freely within the system, have their talent evaluated by others, and earn more money for their talent. And that's only fair. Unfortunately, it changes the landscape and the chemistry of the game, for a lot of people. Then again, it makes it exciting. You actually have fantasy football live in its color, right? Every week. So, you can see a guy playing for this team this year, and next year he could be on the team you're rooting against.
Exactly.
Or your team you were rooting for.
Right.
So, it's a little bit crazy, but, if it was that way during that time, none of those money issues, I think, would have existed.
Okay. Because, I'm thinking of what a holdout means now compared to a holdout then, because, there was your holdout, Lawrence Taylor's holdout, and then with the Cowboys in, I think, 1993. They were in a famous holdout with Emmitt Smith, and he missed the first 2 games or so. And then you talk about people like Des Bryant this past season, where he has the leverage. He has the option to do whatever he would please, as long as the Cowboys are okay with it, saying, listen, I'm going to hold out, and if you're not going to agree to terms on the deal that I want, then you can trade me. But you guys didn't really have that option or that clause back then. Now the free agency is in full swing effect.
Just think about what you just said. If 90% of the New York Giants pass rush was out here arguing and saying, we need to be paid more money, we'd like to be paid more money, you would think that the team would say, okay, well, we should pay them more money. That's Lawrence Taylor, number 56. That's Leonard Marshall, number 70.
Right.
They represent 90% of our pass rush during the course of a 16-game season. Let's pay them their money.
Yeah.
It's the players that we need to have on the field for at least 80% of the football plays in order for us to win a game.
And
so
also
why not pay them?
Yeah, and also not to mention, they're using your likeness in terms of posters, game programs, press releases, newspaper articles. So they're really shining your name up on a marquee level. But you're not getting paid as much you would think if they're throwing your name out there like you're the greatest thing ever.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that was the issue. You got a guy who's the face of the franchise, and you got another guy who's an up-and-coming face of the franchise, or a franchise-type player that, you need to take care of, but yet, he's forcing your hand to make that decision. I shouldn't have had to do that. It should have just been, let's pay the guy his money. Let's get beyond the BS. He's got good representation. We know the type of player he is. He's here every offseason. He's busted his behind in our off-season program. You know, he's a leader in our program. Let's just pay the guy the money he wants. He's an extremely talented guy. Let's pay him.
Right.
That didn't happen. And that right there in itself is what I think caused a lot of the issues between, you know, Lawrence and I as players and the organization.
Mm-hmm. And now to move on to this, I'm sure the 1990 Giants were fortunate to have you. I guess they were glad that this all worked out, because whenever anyone mentions the 1990 Giants, the one play that is always brought up 9 times out of 10, if not 9.5 times out of 10, is your famous hit laying out Joe Montana in that NFC Championship game. So when you hit him, you had mentioned this before, but when you hit him, was that like nothing like any other hit you had? Did you know what you did after you laid him out like that?
Repeat that question.
Okay. I was talking about your famous hit on Joe Montana in the NFC Championship game. When you hit him at first contact, did you realize what you did, or were you just like, "All right, I got him. You know, all right, mission accomplished"? Or did you realize what you did?
Oh, I realized that that I separated from the football and that he was hurt pretty bad. I mean, I knew he had taken, you know, one hell of a shot from me in the back. You know, it wasn't something that I set up a plan to do.
Oh, of course not.
It just so happened that it worked out that, you know, an opportunity existed for me to make a good football play in order to propel my team forward and give us more of a chance to win the football game. And I took advantage of it. I said, heck, if you go back and look at the football play, you know, I slip, I'm crawling, I'm blocked. The guy takes my legs from underneath me, and I get up on my hands and knees, and I'm crawling to get there, and I get there, and you know, separate him from the football, and hoping that Mark Collins will recover it, or Lawrence would catch it in the air and score. And let's put the game out of sight. You know, that's what I was really hoping for. But, you know, it didn't happen as dramatically as I hoped for. But yet, you know, I was able to make a football play and propel my team and put my team in position to where we could make some moves and put ourselves in position to win. You know, it was a hell of a football play. It was a hell of a point in time in my career. And one that if I had a chance to do it all over again, I'd do it the same exact way, if not better.
Right. And when people think about that play, you know, they think about the hit. They don't think about that, hey, the ball was fumbled and Mark Collins whiffed on the ball for what could have been a Giants turnover and what could have been very hazardous for the 49ers. But I think it wasn't so much of the play that developed after the hit. I think it was just the hit itself that shifted the momentum to you guys. And from that point on, I think you guys were rolling. Not that you weren't rolling before, but things were starting to bounce your way because, you know, you knocked out Joe Montana. So now Steve Young's in the game, a very young Steve Young, not the Steve Young that people remember him as. But I think just a lot of fortune started to smile upon you guys after that hit.
Yeah, a lot of fortune fell upon us, and you know, we were able to, you know, now take control of the football game, which was good. Because of Steve Young coming in the game, they didn't have a lot of confidence in his passing ability. So they chose to try to put the ball on the ground, keep the ball from our offense, because our offense was really starting to get going, and they wanted to, you know, keep our defense on the field, see if they could get us to get tired. However, we chose not to get tired in the game. You know, as the game got on, we got stronger, and I think that was the one thing that shocked the 49ers is that, you know, after we lost to them on Monday night, we came back with a vengeance. And that vengeance was to defend the loss that we had in early November against them on Monday night.
And a lot of times when I look back on the 1990 Giants and I watch when America's Game did the 1990 Giants and, you know, all the video footage, is that one of the famous things from that NFC Championship game was when Matt Barr came out to kick the field goal and that NFL Films camera was set up right on you on the sideline. And as soon as you saw that ball clear the uprights, I guess you could explain it better than I could. You were just beyond yourself. I think at that point you couldn't make out what was left, what was right. You were just so, happy and blissful that you guys were going back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think when I look back upon all of this, man, I got to be honest with you. I'm so like I'm just like so taken back because that team was extremely resilient. Those guys were really resilient. Those guys played their butts off. I go back and I look at football plays like the Gary Reason play on fourth down.
Mm-hmm.
I go back and I look at runs by Otis Anderson, throws by Jeff Hostetler. There's a point in the game where Jim Burt hits Jeff Hostetler right on his patella tendon, and his front leg is planted, and he could have really slapped his leg half in two on the football play, but yet Jeff was resilient enough to get up after a direct blow to his patella, and come back and respond with a dagger pass to a tight end by the name of Mark Bavaro to keep a drive alive that was critical.
Right.
Critical in the third and fourth quarter, at two different times. That type of play was indicative of our team. The attitude was to get up one more time than we could be knocked down, and that's the attitude we took into the Super Bowl. Was to get up one more time and we could be knocked down by someone and still compete. And that's what I have to look back on that team. And I think that's something that the 86 team kind of didn't have because, we just pummeled people in 1986. But in 1990, on several occasions, we had to find ways to win. And we found those ways to win.
Absolutely. And so to fast forward a little bit, heading into that Super Bowl, Bill Belichick puts together one of the greatest defensive game plans in the history of the NFL. It's now in the Hall of Fame. The whole strategy was that the Bills were just storming past teams with this no-huddle quick strike offense that Jim Kelly and Andre Reed and Thurman Thomas and countless others were able to perfect for the Marv Levy-led Buffalo Bills. So when Bill Belichick comes in, and you guys are thinking, okay, we're just going to pound Jim Kelly, we're just going to pound those receivers, we're going to limit Thurman Thomas to 20 yards rushing, and then he comes in and says something like, okay, the first thing we have to take care of is the passing. We have to make sure the passing is kept at a minimum, their gains are kept at a minimum, and I don't care if Thurman Thomas gets 100 yards rushing in this game, we have to stop the pass. And was that something that you guys were confused about? Or when did the trust factor come in to perfect that game plan that Belichick oriented?
Well, I tell you, yes, we were confused, but yet we developed enough trust between the troops that for Bill Belichick that we believed in whatever he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. In other words, we didn't challenge him on anything that he wanted to do. We knew that if this is something that Bill Belichick had thought of and had planned for, that we could execute this. It would take a little bit of work, and it would take a little bit of effort, but right. That we knew that we could perform such a task. Did I believe in the scheme that he drew up, which was 2 down linemen, 5 defensive backs, and 4 linebackers in the game, and at times flip-flop the scheme to make it look like a Tampa 2 defense, but yet with a rover in the game, and that rover being Carl Banks guarding, Thurman Thomas wherever he went. I would have never thought we would have been able to deploy that. But we did. We did. We had a 6'5" linebacker who was extremely athletic, who could play in space, and Carl Banks, and people didn't think he could. Mm-hmm. And that weekend, he proved it. He proved it. And also, was the play of a veteran cornerback in Everson Walls and a veteran safety in Dave Durison, who were both stuck in the game at times to help mirror Thurman Thomas when he was out of the backfield.
Mm. Okay.
So it was a very unique game plan. Matter of fact, that game plan and that playbook from that game is actually sitting in Canton.
Right. And and also the one thing you just touched on, David Duerson, who had passed away sadly a few years back, and Everson Walls, they were brought in just for that season. And I guess that was one of the things that they wanted to do was have some more experience in that secondary, make sure that they get players that could read defenses as well as any other player in their predicament. So Everson Walls, a seasoned veteran, spending all those years with the Cowboys, and David Duerson coming over from the Chicago Bears in that famous 46 defense that you guys unfortunately fell victim to in the 85 campaign. But to have those two guys come in, was that something like, wow, look at all this experience we have? And, were they welcome to the new system? Did they embrace it? Or was there a little bit of an ego like, hey, I know what I'm doing? Was there any of that you felt between them and you guys?
No, those two guys came in and they embraced everything that we were doing.
Wow.
And they embraced it with both arms open. I mean, I got as close as anybody could to both Walls and Duerson, as players during the course of that season because, me being a wily veteran and a guy who showed up late in camp, I think it drew me to them for being teased by them in camp and everything else. That we got so close. And Dave Duerson, played an important role back there with some of the young safeties that we had, and Greg Jackson and Myron Guyton that season, and helping those guys understand concepts and schemes that offenses were trying to deploy against us when we played, certain coverages. And Bill Belichick was known for complicated coverage schemes because of, the way he treated certain receivers in different alignments. If a team came out and they put a speedy guy in a slot position and we're playing two coverage, well, Belichick had a scheme for that. If we're playing, cover three, and the backside of cover three was a concern to us scheme-wise, he had a coverage for that. So, he had answers for a lot of the problems that teams could present. And, those guys understood it. And those guys understood how to get the young guys together and get them lined up so that they could actually help play those schemes when they presented themselves.
And there is no question that 1990 team was, as you, someone who played on that team, you consider them one of the greatest teams, but at least a team that was that you could acknowledge and say, wow, that was a good Super Bowl team, despite not having Phil Simms, despite not, Rodney Hampton being there in the Super Bowl in the postseason. But I think that is a great team to take example of for any teams that may be against odds by the press and the general public, and it's always good to again, defy all odds, which is what the Giants are always accustomed to doing, especially recently in these recent Super Bowl runs. But I wanted to move on to a topic that I hope that you'll be willing to answer for me. Now, I was born in 1993, so I was fortunate enough to miss this brief time period. But as the 91 season was coming ahead, it became known that Bill Parcells was resigning. Bill Belichick was already off to Cleveland to try his hand at head coaching, and now the team is left in the hands of Ray Handley. So I know that it was a very troublesome period for the team, and I just wanted to see what your take was on it. Was Ray Handley, what could you make of him? Because there's not really a lot said about him today in hindsight, but what can you tell us about that time period?
Well, it was a weird time because, we as a football team, we just couldn't quite get on the same page with Ray. I recall, when Ray took the job, because we were familiar with Ray in the locker room, I recall being one of the first guys to go to Ray and just flat out lay it out to him. Listen, I got screwed last season. I start 10 ball games because Bill had it in for me. I played a second play of every game for the first team. And and it wasn't until, hold on one second.
Yeah, sure.
I'm back.
Okay.
Okay, so, you know, I didn't start for 10 games, and as it turns out, you know, my consecutive start thing kind of gets ruined. You know, for whatever reason it happened, it happened. Of course, I was pissed off, but I was upset about it because, you know, my contract that I signed to go back to play had an incentive in it that would have provided me six figures of money had I had the consecutive starts I wanted to have as a player, which was consistent with what I had done in previous years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to rewrite that wrong, still knowing that I had, you know, Pro Bowl type talent and was a Pro Bowl caliber player on this football team and could exemplify it in my play each and every time I went out to play, regardless of what somebody else thought or whatever else was going on. And so I went to Ray Hanley to say to him, Ray, listen, you know, that's the player you're going to get. You're going to get the same Leonard Marshall you know. He's going to come in shape. He's going to work his tail off in camp. He's going to make sure that he brings young guys along. At that time, we had a couple of young players, young defensive linemen. One of them was a kid by the name of Clint James that we drafted from LSU.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever player that I can help, you know, to improve and stick around here to help you build this team to where you want to be, you know, I'm going to do that. You know, I'm going to give you, you know, my best. That season in 1991, I had 11 and a half quarterback sacks, and I make my third Pro Bowl. And that in itself right there was, you know, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to show to Ray Hanley. Now, Ray Hanley hires the next season in 92, he hires another guy from New England by the name of Rod Russ to come in and become the defensive coordinator. And
Rod Russ, yes.
That's the year that we had that's the year that we had many of the problems that we had. You know, as a matter of fact, that 91 season, I was MVP of our defense and MVP of our team.
Mm.
But in 92, when we hired Rod Russ, we just couldn't get on the same page with the man. The defensive scheme that he was looking to deploy wasn't working. You know, the team was in disarray. The leadership on the team was in disarray. We had defensive plays coming into the huddle, being changed in the huddle by players. Players not wanting to play the scheme that was called, but play the scheme that we knew, and that we knew that could work against an offense that we were playing against. And it was just a bad situation. We had players fighting players. We had players fighting coaches. We had coaches talking back to one another. I mean, it just was a bad football season in 92. And something had to happen. And, it's tough when I look back on that. You know, did it take all that to make that team any better? I would hope not. But, you know, it did what it did.
Yeah, and it was interesting that you brought up Rod Rust, who was the Giants' defensive coordinator during that time. And the only time like I can remember Rod Rust was when he was the head coach of the Patriots during that 1990 season, and they were absolutely terrible. It was a rudderless ship. I think they were like 1-15 that year. You guys made short work of them in that season finale. So for Rod Rust to come in with that kind of track record, I'm sure you guys weren't thrilled.
No, we weren't thrilled, but what could we do at that point? I mean, we had to play the hand that we were dealt. And that's just what it is. We had to play the hand we dealt. he was in a fiduciary position to make those decisions, to bring whoever he wanted in to the organization, and we were forced to have to deal with that. You know, and that was the sad part about it, was we were forced to deal with that. You know, I would have hoped that we wouldn't have had to deal with that, but, you know, it ended up being that.
Yeah, and it's always sad to have a team of that kind of talent just coming off a Super Bowl win. But was there any of that? I mean, I'm sure you guys understood, I guess, Bill Parcells' predicament that he wanted to step down for health reasons. I'm sure it had nothing to do with his stance in the front office or his relationship with anybody internally in the Giants organization. But were you guys a little bit upset? Like, you didn't care who was brought in? You didn't care if, Chuck Noll was brought in? Like, were you guys just disappointed that Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick left in the same offseason?
Yeah, we were disappointed. We were very disappointed.
Mm.
We thought that Belichick would have been the first guy to get the shot at the job.
Of course.
And it just didn't work out that way. It just did not work out that way. But we thought that he would definitely be the first guy to obtain a shot at the job. And I never was a guy for office politics or institutional politics, but I guess more or less what I'm saying is the Giants did what they thought they had to do. Mm. It's unfortunate that they got caught up in their own little game with that, because if they would have just left it alone and more or less give Bill Belichick the chance to make a decision whether or not he wanted to be part of that organization still or not, and coach in the shadow of Bill Parcells or not, that should have been their first priority.
Exactly.
The best unit on our team was our defense. I mean, if the best unit on your team is your defense, you would want to think that the Giants, being that they were known to be a historical great defensive football team, you would think that they would have said, okay, let's work on that side of the football. We could fix an offense, but our defense works. So if they can't score, they can't win. Let's hire this guy on defense, let him bring in a great offensive mind, and we got a chance to win.
Sure.
Instead, they went the other way, and it just didn't work itself out.
Right. And again, like with this 1991 offseason, it was already known that Bill Belichick was going to the Cleveland Browns to be the head coach there. But at that time, there were no rumors about Bill Parcells leaving. Bill Parcells would have stayed there for 20, 30 years if he wanted to. He would have been the Don Shula of the Giants, but it just so happened that it was a really, really bad set of circumstances where Bill Belichick finally leaves New York after so many years as the defensive coordinator, goes to the Browns with Art Modell to try to build a winner over there, and then it just so happens 2 or 3 months later, Bill Parcells resigns after the NFL draft. This was, I guess he resigned in May, and he already had done his draft. So it was just a really bad set of circumstances, and I'm sure that everyone would like to replay it again and keep people where they were and try to execute what you had just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I said, it was a cluster of garbage that just so happened to surround this organization and this football team that I felt did not have to happen, and it happened, and you kind of wish that you could rewrite that wrong, but it's too late to rewrite that.
Exactly.